Jake LaMotta was the oldest living boxing champion. I say was because he died at the age of 95 yesterday. And he was the former middleweight champion of the world when they weren't giving away belts like they give away candy these days. It was like one title per weight class, and he was that dude in the middleweight division. LaMotta retired with a record of 83 wins, 19 losses, 4 draws with 30 knockouts. So that's over 100 fights, 30 knockouts. He didn't have a lot of knockouts, but he wasn't a guy you wanted to fight because he fought like a bully with this unrelenting style. If you look at a guy today like Timothy Bradley, who also isn't a huge puncher, or wasn't a huge puncher, I should say, but when you look at his fight and how he dogged Devin Alexander and just took his heart, made him quit. If you look at his fight and how he fought Lamont Peterson, Bradley was a guy who knew he didn't have a punch, but just fought like he had one. And that's how LaMotta was. Very aggressive style and a top 10 all-time chin. LaMotta was stopped a few times, but he was never knocked out, if you follow me. Interesting story about LaMotta, those that know him. There was a movie about his career called Raging Bull. And in Raging Bull, they reenacted a fight that he had with a guy named Marcel Cerdan. And in the real fight, Marcel Cerdan got knocked down and he hurt his arm. This was maybe in the first or second round, but he kept fighting and kept fighting round after round with a dislocated shoulder, and he hurt his hand also. And eventually, later in the fight, the pain became too much and he had to quit. So in the movie, they were trying to get the actor who played Cerdan to fall exactly like Cerdan did in the real fight. So the guy who was playing the role was a prospect in real life. He was I believe he was undefeated, and so they kept trying to get that scene right. So they did a bunch of takes, just trying to get that particular moment in the fight right. So finally they got it right after who knows how many takes. And so good job. Everybody's happy except one guy. One guy that wasn't happy was the boxer who played Cerdan in the movie, because he actually hurt his shoulder so bad trying to copy exactly how Cerdan fell in the real fight. The actor hurt his shoulder so bad that he was never able to box again. That's a shame. By the way, the real life Cerdan died in a plane crash on his way to New York for the rematch against LaMotta. That's crazy, right? So Jake LaMotta fought Sugar Ray Robinson 6 times. You all know who Sugar Ray Robinson is, right? And LaMotta lost 5 times, but he did beat Robinson once. Now, included in those 6 fights was the final fight, which is referred to as the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Towards the end of that fight, Ray Robinson began teeing off on LaMotta. I mean, he began beating him down like you've seen Balboa get beat down in some of the Rocky movies. Trust me, if those fights, or if that particular fight at least happened today, it would have been stopped early. But LaMotta went 13 rounds. These were 15-round fights back then. LaMotta went 13 rounds, and I mean, he was beaten unmercifully. But he would not go down. So eventually the referee stepped in. LaMotta was against the ropes taking punishment, and the referee stopped it. But Ray never knocked LaMotta down. And believe you me, LaMotta let Ray Robinson know it until his dying day. He took pride in his chin. And when you're talking about a killer like Ray Robinson, a killer puncher, he couldn't put him down. And I'm sure LaMotta gave him the business all the way up until the end. One thing about LaMotta is, with all the wars he was in, and I mean wars, he well into his 90s, he could still speak clearly. He showed no signs of slippage. He didn't suffer from any ring-related impediments. I mean, he just... So when people tie certain things into boxing, it doesn't happen to everyone. And he was certainly the case of a guy who lived life to the fullest and didn't have any apparent, as I stated, any kind of boxing related problems going on with the health and what have you. LaMotta was certainly one of the best, and his era, the 1940s, was arguably the greatest era in boxing. You had Jake LaMotta, Joe Louis, Ray Robinson, Rocky Graziano, Tony Zale, Bozak, Henry Armstrong, a.k.a. Hammerin' Hank, a.k.a. Homicide Hank, Charlie Burley. I mean, don't even let me get started. The 40s, don't... Thank you, Jake. Thank you for your career. All right. We have a big weekend of boxing coming up. It all starts on Friday night on ESPN, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. You guys, you need to start checking out these cards when the big names in boxing don't fight on them. You got to start watching these cards, because I'm telling you, if Oscar De La Hoya, and I'm just using him as an example, stays away from his demons, I'm telling you, his roster, he's going to give him 2 to 4 years. I mean, and his entire roster is just going to be either champions or guys who are battling for titles. I'm not sure if this is a Golden Boy on ESPN or Top Rank, just because of the combatants. But check these cards out. They're names that will be big names in the future. They're not big names now, but we need you as fans to watch. Besides, I'm sure Teddy Atlas is going to go on some kind of rant about last weekend's big fight. So I wouldn't be surprised if last week's fight between G and Nello did close to 1.5 million. I think the only things that will prevent it from hitting the 2 million pay-per-view mark is that the McGregor fight a few weeks earlier that people had to fork out $100 for. And also the fact that parts of Texas, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Puerto Rico had no power. And they didn't have any way to watch the fight. So I think if you add those people in who would have purchased it, I think we could have got to the 2 million mark. I think it'll do over 1 million. I'm not sure. I don't think it can reach 2 million. And those factors, the McGregor thing, and then the hurricane season, which hit hard and then just hit Puerto Rico hard again. So say a prayer for the folks that are affected. So opening telecast is the highly, highly touted Michael McConlin. Guys, I just don't see it. I mean, when I say great amateur, but I just don't see it. Now, maybe I'm just too harsh on this guy, but when I saw him live, I just didn't see world-class hand speed. I didn't see the power. Maybe it's just me, and as he steps up, maybe I'll see the talent then, but I'm not as high on this guy as the rest of the world seems to be. In the main event, we will see a guy that quite a few people are high on, Oscar Valdez. He is the WBO World Featherweight Champion, and this young Mexican can fight. He's already making his 4th title defense of the WBO title that he won in 2016. All right, so he's 22-0, 19 knockouts. Watch this kid, guys. I mean, he could be an opponent for Leo Santa Cruz or Carl Frampton, Gary Russell Jr., Jojo Diaz, some of those guys. But down the line, there could be a super fight with Vasily Lomachenko. People need to know who Valdez is now, so that they'll know who he is against Lomachenko in a year or two if that super fight happens. It's not going to be super unless people know who he is. We already know who Lomachenko is. You got to know who Oscar Valdez is. Of course, he'll have to beat undefeated Genesis Cervania, who's 29-0, 12 knockouts. All right, that's who he takes on Friday night. Valdez knows how to fight. You'll love his style. He throws big hooks to the head, big hooks to the body, overhand right. He's like a right-handed Manny Pacquiao as far as output is concerned. Not as quick as Pacquiao, but he has good footwork and he just punches. So check him out. ESPN, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, Friday night fights. On that same card, the fight I'm most interested in is the co-feature. Another 26-year-old WBO super middleweight champion, Gilberto Ramirez. Okay, he's 35-0, 24 knockouts. He makes his 2nd title defense against Jesse Hardwork Hart, 22-0, 18 knockouts. Jesse's 28 years old, out of Philadelphia, Philly fighter. Now Ramirez, if you remember, he won his title over King Arthur Abraham on the Pacquiao Bradley 3 undercard. And King Arthur was the king of the 160-pound division. And when he moved up to 168, he was nothing. I mean, at all. He first moved up and he participated in that Super 6 tournament, and he fought Andre Ward and Jermaine Taylor, and I can't recall who else. Was it Kessler? Well, anyway, but he wasn't much of anything at 168, and I don't really count. He was the man at 160. Do not get that twisted. But at 68, I don't give any of those guys credit. So we're still a bit unsure about Ramirez, because that may have been his best opponent. He's got knockouts, but as he stepped up, he hasn't had one in his last 5 fights. So he's got wins over Derek Edwards. He also beat Derek Finley. But Friday night's going to be a strong test for him. Both fighters look strong at the weigh-in. Jesse, oh man, Jesse Hart looks... Jesse Hart's physique is the way you want your physique to look like for a title fight. And speaking of Jesse, the buzz, the hype, everything has come out of Philly about Jesse Hart for years. I've heard people talk about him for years. Now, you got your shot. So, Hardwork has talked about a title shot for some time now. And I remember Hardwork calling out Gennady Golovkin a couple of years ago. He had some words for Golovkin, and I wish it would have happened, but Golovkin would have demolished him at that point. So Hart is 28 years old. He's the son of Eugene Cyclone Hart, who was a middleweight contender back in the 70s. He fought Marvelous Marvin Hagler. Hart is a big boy, man. He's 6'3", got a 77.5-inch reach. He needs to use that Friday night. Hart, he's a guy that has all the tools, but I kind of feel about him like I do Conlon. I mean, he's a good fighter, but I don't see what all the hype is about. And listen, maybe he'll prove me wrong on Friday night. Tonight. Friday night fights. 10:30 p.m. Eastern. So maybe he'll prove me wrong tonight. But then we move to Saturday. First up on Saturday is the WBO heavyweight title fight between champion Joseph Parker and challenger Hughie Fury. Now, they put the Fury's drug situation on. They put Hughie Fury's drug situation on hold, just as well as Tyson Fury's drug situation. They kind of put everything on hold, which, listen, if that clears Hughie Fury's way to fight, then I assume Tyson Fury can go to camp and do whatever. He's been complaining about that and him not being allowed to fight. But if you're going to let the brother fight, or the cousin I should say, Hughie Fury fight, and you're saying you're putting the Furies, that's apostrophe S, if you're putting their drug cases, I guess, or what have you, aside, then I guess Tyson can fight too. I mean, listen, they were both caught red-handed, and I don't know how they got this fight, which was initially supposed to be in New Zealand. Now it's in Hughie Fury's home country. That's boxing for you. Also on Saturday, we got the World Boxing Super Series. It continues with the Cruiserweight Tournament. WBO champion Junior Dorticos defends his title against Dmitry Kudryashov. This is a good fight. You gotta catch it. You can watch it on WorldBoxingSuperSeries.com. If you can't get it there, if you got a Fire Stick or an Android cable box, you might want to catch it. The Parker versus Fury, that's Dorticos and Kudryashov. That'll be on WorldBoxingSuperSeries.com, or get yourself a Fire Stick or an Android cable box. The Parker versus Fury fight will be on Integrated Sports pay-per-view. If not, you can't get that, you want to get yourself a Fire Stick or an Android cable box. Later that evening on HBO, we got the replay of Golovkin beating Canelo's ass, and then we got live boxing as Jorge Linares, champion, WBA lightweight title is on the line versus Luke Campbell. No, not that Luke Campbell. And for you people that know who Uncle Luke is. So when Linares gets in a groove, he's as good as it gets. And people want to see Linares, if he wins on Saturday night, they want to see the matchup with Linares versus Mikey Garcia. And if Linares wins, he'll turn the pressure up on Garcia. Jorge Linares is a superb boxer who doesn't have a lot of flaws. I mean, he is a fantastic fighter. Check him out on Saturday night, HBO. However, his chin isn't his best attribute, and that's what makes fights like this tempting. I mean, you got to watch it. I think he beats Luke Campbell, but you never know. There's another fight. I'm not sure if they're going to show it on the HBO, because once you show 12 rounds of Golovkin beating Canelo's ass, I'm not sure if they'll show this, but I want to see it if they do. Antonio Orozco versus Roberto Ortiz, or Ortiz as people like to say these days, but it was Ortiz when I was in elementary and middle school, and then Victor Ortiz kind of changed the game. But anyway, 10 rounds, junior welterweights, a couple fringe titles on the line. Nobody cares. NAB something and Feker Box something, I don't know. Anyway, it's an interesting fight. I like Orozco in the fight, but Ortiz is going to make it rough and dirty. He's going to Jeff Horn him. But I think that Orozco is going to land something straight from a distance late in this fight, and I think it's going to get there before Ortiz's wider shot gets there, and it's going to drop him. Lastly, I got these posters. I think I got like 5 or 6 posters from the Golovkin and Alvarez. I don't want these things. If anybody, listen, I always get boxing souvenirs and whatever. If somebody doesn't give them to me, if I don't take them from the scene of the crime or whatever, and shirts and all that other stuff. But I got these posters. There's a picture on the screen of them now. Anybody wants a poster, let me know. Listen, I'm not promising you. I'm going to really have to be in the mood to mail these things properly. So, I mean, if you want one, it comes to you torn, hey, throw some of that clear tape on it. Nobody know the difference. And that's about it. Catch you on the next one.